Welcome back to some Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm Dear Darling. Should we see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhallow today, where we're relaxing as per usual. And we're going to talk about, I don't know, I need to record some more videos and stuff, definitely. I will say, I recorded some 9 Souls. I am on a hard, this boss fight is hard. Genuinely. Like, spoilers for the next 2 episodes of 9 Souls, is literally just me fighting a boss, and, I did not beat this boss. It's crazy difficult, apparently. But good evening, everyone. Right now in Fawnhallow, it's 7:25 PM on Saturday, January 24th, 2026. Actually, I kind of retract that statement because it's not actually crazy difficult. It's definitely It's definitely the most challenging boss, and definitely feels like a step up compared to the other bosses. But the thing that makes it so challenging is because there is just one attack I do not know what the parry timing is, and it is basically messing me up entirely, because it's a very unrelenting boss fight is probably how I would describe it. Like, you don't have a lot of breathing room, so when you mess one thing up, it kind of like messes up the entire chain in a way, which really sucks, because if I could just get the parry timing down from that, I actually genuinely think I would have beaten this boss by now. But hey, I mean, this is part of a journey, to struggle, to not be able to do it, and to finally break through and see what's going on. I don't know what kind of accent I'm doing here. So yeah. That's what we're all about, you know? What else was I going to talk about? I don't really know, to be honest. I don't really know. I played a tiny bit more Enfield, not really a lot more Enfield. I think we did a lot of drawing last night, where we we're with a bit of like a late night drawing club. I spoken about this before. Where basically 4 of us come together to like draw something. Like the last time we did Pokemons from prompts. It was really fun. I mean, every time we do these collaborative drawing efforts together, it's always a lot of fun. This one we decided to do a bit of a bigger one, which is basically the prompt was from Drawfee's latest episode, which is drawing themselves as magical girls, or the mahou genre in general, to be honest. And yeah, it was a really interesting one, to be honest. It like people probably strongly assume that it is my favorite genre of things, and it's not my favorite genre. I do like it, like some parts of it. I haven't seen much from it. Like, I've seen Sailor Moon when I was much younger. I don't remember a lot of it. I've seen which was my favorite anime for a long time, to be fair, Madoka Magica. But yeah, it's otherwise, you know, like I'm trying to think of other ones I've watched on that. I haven't really watched any of them, and I'm not just talking about anime. I'm talking about the Western animations as well. Like, I don't think I've watched many of them. But yeah, we basically draw ourselves as if we were in that genre, you know, or basically a take of ourselves in that genre. I mean, in my opinion, you're free to take it however you want, because the general idea is some sort of transfer. Like, it's kind of like, the way I describe it is like a different version of superheroes, you know. I said like a fantasy cosmic sort of version of superheroes. But yeah, no, I mean, what I did is pretty fun, to be honest. Like, I very rarely draw myself when I'm drawing things, or anything which is meant to represent me particularly. You might be like, what about Dee? Well, Dee's like more of a mascot, more than she is, from what I see, like a portrayal of myself, you know. She's like a character I play, is probably the better way to put it, rather than anything else. So yeah, it's really fun. Like, I ended up doing something which was trying to be inspired by Bird of Paradise, because I was like, what would I be like if I was put in one of these shows? And it's interesting to think about this. I spoke about this before, like what like TV trope or whatever not literally TV, I'm talking about the site TV tropes. What trope you would fulfill if you and your friends or something, etc., were put into this sort of thing. And I think it definitely could be a lot of different things, mind you, what I would be, because everyone is multifaceted as people. But the thing is, like, even within your friend group, it's not like you often take off like a solidified role, but it's more like, I think things where what parts of you stand out the most, I think get exemplified in a different way. So yeah, I'm not going to dive too much into it because that was getting like almost a little bit personal, who I, the sort of person I would be. But I would say that if I was a Madoka Magica, I'd almost certainly be Mami, is my guess. And you can extract that information what you will. From Sailor Moon, I actually don't remember the personalities of any other Sailor Scouts apart from Sailor Moon herself, so that makes it a little bit difficult for me to say. Yeah, so what else am I going to talk about? I don't know. I guess I could talk about that more. I don't really have much else to say about it. I'm doing a bit more Uma Musume, to be honest. I finally was like, okay, I'm done with trying to make Halloween Super Creek work for a little bit. I'm gonna like make my other ones. I made a Karen-chan. She won like one of the practice rounds for my first run of making her. I made a Fuji Kisaki. My Fuji Kisaki is doing nothing, is what I'd say. So I'm sort of like, maybe I'll exchange Fuji Kisaki for someone else. Oh, you don't really know, to be honest. Like I might exchange her for, I don't know, like I might do Air Groove, because apparently Air Groove is pretty good. And it turns out Fuji Kisaki's unique is actually useless in this one because it procs too early, weirdly enough. Anyway, that's not what I'm talking about, not what I'm talking about. I'm going to talk about something else. I don't know. Should I talk about my whole genre in general? I mean, to be fair, it's normally known as Mahou Shoujo, like magical girl, but like, it is a bit of specific, I suppose, when you specify it like that. You know, and I understand that most of the beginning genres of it, and most of the genres, I think, in general, what people sort of imagine it to do are girls, I suppose, transforming. Often like high school girls or whatever, who knows. But it's sort of like, you know, to me, that's not necessarily what defines it. Or should it be the thing that defines it? I don't know. That's why I'm like, I'm more tempted to use Mahou as a descriptor. Even though it's just a Japanese word for magic. It just, I don't know. It feels like, to me, it sort of encompasses it a bit better. But also I understand, you know. Oh, Winx Club. Yeah, that's a really good example of one. I understand why it's called that, you know. Totally Spies is one. I never thought about that. That's absolutely true. It's like a spy take on it. Because, like, I don't know what you would use to really describe it, I suppose. Outside of, like, thematics. Because it's not like, you know, certainly femininity, I suppose. Is it built into, like, the magical girl portion of it? But to me, I think it's all about the sort of transformation aspect of it. It's sort of like the idea, it's sort of like an action takeoff slice of life. That's how I would describe it in my mind, you know? It's like slice of life cross action, where it's like, the general concept is people are living double lives, one as like an ordinary person in whatever category, that makes sense, and the double life they're living is like a superhero. That to me is what defines the magical girl genre, to be honest. And it's interesting to kind of think about, because I think maybe that's why, like, in my mind, I'm like, it's like things you can play around with so much more often. Like, that's why, like, Totally Spies makes perfect sense to me as, like, a magical girl, quote, show. Like, are spies, like, these superhero, fantasy, like, fairy-like magical beings, which you'd think of them, the classic sort of magical girl genre? No. But do they have a transformation sequence? Kind of. They have more like a gear-up sequence is perhaps a way to do it. But to me, I think the core concept is the fact that they're living these double lives. One as these, like, high school girls, and then two as these, like, kick-ass spies, right? It's sort of like a youthful version on the take of a superhero genre, is kind of how I think about it. That's what makes sense to me, to be honest. My Little Pony Equestria Girls. Oh my gosh, that actually makes sense. Like, yeah, not the first couple of movies probably, but when they actually get the crystal powers, I suppose. Then yeah, Equestria Girls, that's 100% a magical girl genre. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Like, that's why, like, I feel like it should like call the genre something else at this point. Well, I guess, okay, that's to be fair, Majoko. Mahoko maybe makes more sense, right? That sounds a bit weird to me in my head. Mahogho probably might be how you say it. I don't know. It's really interesting to think about. Because I think like to extrapolate this further from just a very specific type of description, which is not really what the conversation topic I was going for. It's interesting to think about these more, I'm not going to say vague, because I think the idea of like what a magical genre defines is actually quite solidified for a lot of people who know about it. But it's more like the concept, or like what are key parts of certain genres. It's interesting, because that's, you know, not something you think about, but it's probably ill-defined, because each person might have their own different take of like, oh yeah, this is something which makes sense, you know, for this genre, or this is something which is how I define this genre. Like, how would you define a thriller? Like, you can have different types of thrillers, you know, dramatic thrillers, you can have horror thrillers, you can have, I don't know, psychological thrillers, which all have a very different take on the different ways that they try and sort of get your blood pumping, right? So this kind of feels like the same thing to me, where like my reflection of it is like, that is a core concept which defines the genre, I suppose, more than anything. But I also understand like it's a very gendered genre. Like, I mean, look at it in the name. But to me, like, I don't know, it's kind of a sort of thing where like when it's referred to as that name, it has lost its definition in a sense of its name. Like it's almost like a depersonalization of a word, right? Use that word and then that just becomes, it represents that as a concept rather than the literal words it means. But that's not necessarily true. Like, I'm not saying that my perspective is the right perspective. I think that's, I'm just saying that this is how I think about things, which I didn't really consider before. Like, I think, what's a good, like, League of Legends is a good thing to think about. Like, when I hear League of Legends, I don't think, oh, it's like an assembled, like, group or company of superheroes or heroes coming together, essentially. I just think League of Legends, that together phrase, has become like its own identified word in my language, which represents that game itself, rather than the concept of being a collection of legendary heroes, essentially. Which is weird to think about, because that is kind of the way I'm saying it. It's just like, that's just how words are defined, aren't they? But like, that's how words are defined in general. You hear a word and then it gets associated with that definition. Like, why does that change when it comes to phrases, you know? Because I think that's, maybe this is why, because that's kind of how it works in Chinese. A lot of like words are made by sort of combining two other words together, really. I can't think of a good example. The one that people always use is like penguin. In Chinese is made up from the words of like suit and goose or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head. Yeah. Like is definitely goose. I can't remember what she is. I think it's suit, or like enterprise apparently. Okay. So it's like company goose, essentially. Which, you know, individually, of course, I mean, that was a bad one to use. Oh, dian now, that's a really good one to use, is the Chinese word for computer. But literally translated, dian means electric, and now means like head or brain. So, while literally you're just saying, oh, it's the electric brain. I don't know, I think as, you know, to me, it's always like, Maybe I'm just saying that maybe this is why it's why maybe other people think like this as well. Maybe it doesn't really matter. But, you know, saying dian now together, of course, means the word computer. Like, that's how it should be, right? It's a new word which is defined. But then in English, you know, if you said something like, there are cases where words are defined like that. Like, I don't know, it's really hard to think of like off the top of your head. What point basically does a phrase become a compound word? Does that distinction between it becoming a phrase and it becoming a word in its own right get blurred, you know? Like, to me, like, good morning is actually a good example of it. Good morning is basically a greeting which you say early in the day, right? But literally you're just saying good. You're wishing someone a good morning. Like, the time of day they have is a good time, essentially. But weirdly, so good morning is almost like it's a word in its own right in my head. I'm not sure that's a great example, because that one's such a direct, literal translation. Or goodbye is an even better one, right? Well, no, because it's not, because it came from God be with you or something, right? I don't know. It's hard to think of a good example, but there's something interestingly linguistic here about the treatment of how phrases sometimes, what makes a phrase feel like a collection of two distinct words or become one conceptual idea in of itself. At what point during language does that happen? I should ask my linguistic friend that, and he'd be like, stop talking to me about this sort of random stuff. I don't know. And I'm like, fair. Where we use black for the text? We should probably use it more often. Because I think that's really interesting to think about. Compound. It's like when we first learned about compound words back in school, I remember we were just saying like, oh, compound is a compound word. Why? Because it's made out of the two words com and pound. What word is common? You know, like .com. Because, I don't know, to our 6-year-old brains, we were like, this is a word. But, I mean, common isn't a word, it's just short for, I don't know, communications or something? It's just the US domain. That's a general idea. But ain't that interesting? Ain't that interesting indeed? What about a word like butterscotch, you know? Butterscotch is... Well, I don't actually know how you make butterscotch, to be honest. I assume it's from butter. Boiling brown sugar and butter together. Like, it's made from two words, butter and scotch. And while they have a sort of, like, connection to each other, butterscotch in itself is, like, a very different... It's a distinct concept compared to butter and scotch, to me. I wonder why it uses the word scotch, though. Because it doesn't use scotch. Let's see Wikipedia what it say. One could become from a word of cut or score for word scotch. Alternative from word scorch. So, oh, maybe it was like butterscotch. Interesting. It'd be better if I had a compound word which was not as distinctly like made from those two things. I don't know. Because obviously butterscotch is made from butter, so it's a bit harder to say. But that's like the general idea. Isn't it? It's such a weird concept how compounds work, words work in your head. It's like I can almost feel that new connection in my brain being made, whereas it's like, ooh, ideation, and it's drawing itself up to like a word, and it's like grabbing like a piece of each word and splashing them together, like if it's making a new colour and it forms that new concept. Does that make sense? That probably makes no sense whatsoever. Anyway, I guess that's what I really wanted to say about it. So I guess on that note, I'm gonna round this episode up here. Compound words, really. So if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Adam across the New Horizons. I've been here, darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope to see each other again. But for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye bye for now.